Hi guys, today we will learn basics about the Golang programming language. Golang is a programming language made for modern hardware which supports multi-core processing with the use of concurrency primitives that are built into the language. But today we will learn about some fundamentals. This is going to be a multi-part series, so be sure to be subscribed and stay tuned for the upcoming videos. Let's start with understanding the basics. In Golang, any file is part of a package and it's defined as the keyword package and the name of the package, which is main. Any main package starts with a function called as main, and how we define it is the keyword func, then the name of the function with opening closing parenthesis, and then the curly brackets. Let's try to add something in this function. What exactly is a function? A function is anything that takes in input and produces an output. That's all a function is. Let's try to do something in this. Let's define a variable. Now, there are two ways to define a variable. You can define a variable called something like this, which takes a value, let's say 64, or you can define another variable called as another thing. So both of them are different ways of assigning variables. Now let's try to do something with these variables because the compiler is telling us that they are declared but not used. In Golang, it's important that you use every variable that you declare, otherwise the compiler will not compile your program. Let's try to print this by using the printf function from the standard library. This function will take an input string along with some formatting directives. What are formatting directives? Let's come to that. So let's say we want to print a string called as this is something and this is another thing. Now, how do we print the values of something and another thing in the string? All we do is use formatting directives. So let's say we want to print something after this sentence. So we say %d, which is a formatting directive for printing integers. We'll have to do the same thing after this, which is %d. Now we pass in the variables in order that we want to print them. So the first thing will be something and the next would be another. You see, the editor automatically imported the relevant package that we wanted to use. Now let's try to run this program. To run any Go program, you have to make sure that it has the main function, which we have, and then we have to check the name of the file, which is for us basics.go. Let's try to run this with the command go run space the file name, which is basics.go. When we run this, it will print that this is something and this is another thing. Exactly what we wanted. Now let's define a function that actually takes in parameters. It's called the function takes parameters. Takes parameter can take any parameter that you want. It's up to the programmer to define the signature of this. So let's say I want to take a integer. I will just say age and I will say the type of this. It's important to know at this point that Golang is a statically typed programming language, which means that any variable you define has a specific type attached to it. So when we say that a function takes in some parameter, we can't just give it the name of the parameter. We have to say what type it is. So in our case, we can say it is an integer. Now we can say that this function can do anything with this integer. Let's try to print it again. With functions, you can call them from anywhere, but for now we will call them from the main function. We will say age is 19. Now let's try to run this program. You see that it now prints age is 19. Now what if I wanted functionality as part of an object? But Golang is not an object-oriented programming language. You can model behaviors or functions in Golang in a very intuitive manner. Let's try to do that. This is where structs come into play. A struct is just a collection of another types. Let's try to define one so that we have a better idea on what they look like and what they do, and also what we can use them for. Let's try to define a struct in Golang. Let's say that we have a struct called as person. This is how you define it. This is an empty struct for now. Let's try to add some fields to it. Fields is basically the underlying type that this struct contains. Nothing more than that. It's pretty straightforward. Let's try to say that a person has an age. So we can say age and then we can give it a type. Let's try to give this person an age which is of type this. We can also add another attributes that would define what a person is. We can say that a person has a name or a person has a date of birth, which we can say that it's also an integer. You can add as many as you want, it's up to the programmers, but for now we will just add 3 characteristics to a person. Now let's understand how this struct can be used to define some behavior. What does a person do? A person can say their name, age, or their date of birth. Let's try to define this behavior. As we just saw that we have functions in Golang, but when you want to define some behavior that depends on a struct, like in our case the person struct, we want to use something called as methods. Now what is a method? It's simply a function but which works on a specific struct. For example, to define a method, all we say what struct it depends on, which is the person struct, and then we write the name of the method, which can be anything. For now we will say name. Similarly, you can add any behavior for this struct now that you know how to define methods. For example, I will say age, or I can say date of birth. Now let's complete these functions. Did you see how we accessed the name variable? A name is defined now on a person. So we don't need to actually accept anything in the function parameter because this method works on the person type, which means we already have all the data related to a person when this method is called. So we can simply do p.name because we have the struct. Let's try to add the same thing to all the behavioral functions. Okay, now that we have defined the behavior, let's come to the main crux of it. How do we actually call these methods or this behavior? All we have to do is just initialize a struct. How do we do that? It's very simply the same way that we did for variables. You do that by giving it a variable name and then the name of the struct. After that, you have to add 2 curly braces, opening, closing. Inside that, it's the same pattern again, where you define the variable that are in their struct. So you can say age, which is maybe 19. You can say name, and you can say date of birth. Now you have this person ready. You can observe that we cannot add any other variable in this apart from the one that we have defined at line number 25 right here. So if I try to say height, you can see that I cannot do that. The compiler says unknown field height in struct. So now that we have a correctly defined person struct ready, let's call the behavior on this. How do we do that? All that we do is write the variable name for the person struct and then dot and then call the method name. So we can say name, and then similarly for every behavior you can do the same thing. Now let's try to run our program. You can say we have everything printed accordingly. And that's it for today. If you like this video, please let me know in the comment section and make sure to stay tuned for next videos on the same series. We're going to learn Golang from A to Z and we're going to build some fun projects down the line. Thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great evening. Bye.